If he's on your mind nonstop, it's not random. Something deeper is already happening, and what I'm about to reveal will shock you. Stay with us and watch this full video. You do not want to miss these 7 truths. Like, comment, and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Now listen to me carefully. If a man is on your mind all the time, I'm not talking about a little crush. I'm talking about when you wake up thinking about him, you go to sleep thinking about him, you hear a song and somehow it's about him, you see his name somewhere and your heart skips. You think that's random? It's not. And here's the truth. Nobody explains properly. When someone lives in your mind constantly, something is shifting in the energy between you. Whether he admits it or not, whether he shows it or not, things are already happening on his side too. Let me break down these 7 truths. First truth is this: he feels the shift in your attention. Let me tell you something most women underestimate. A man feels when your attention shifts. You may think you're being subtle. You may believe you're playing it cool. You might tell yourself, I'm not doing anything different. But when a woman starts thinking about a man constantly, her energy changes, and energy is loud. See, attention is power. When a woman begins to focus on a man deeply, she starts investing emotionally. She listens more carefully. She remembers small details. She laughs a little softer. She becomes more patient with his flaws. Her tone changes. Her timing changes. Even her silence changes. And a man feels that shift. Now understand this. Men may not always express emotions the way women do, but they are highly sensitive to respect, admiration, and emotional focus. When your attention locks on to him, he feels important, chosen, elevated, and that does something to him internally. You see, when you consistently think about a man, your behavior starts aligning with that thought pattern. You text differently. You respond differently. You may not even realize it, but you prioritize him mentally. And men can detect prioritization almost instinctively. A man knows when he's just an option, and he definitely knows when he's becoming the focus. Even if he pretends not to notice, he notices. Here's why. Men are wired to track value. They measure how they're being received. When a woman's energy becomes warmer, more attentive, more emotionally available, it signals significance. It tells him, you matter here. And when a man feels that he matters, 2 things happen. First, his ego responds. He stands a little taller. He feels validated. He feels seen. That alone can increase his attraction because admiration feeds masculine confidence. When a woman's attention consistently affirms him, it strengthens his sense of importance. But here's the deeper layer. Beyond ego, there's awareness. When he feels your emotional investment rising, he subconsciously understands that the dynamic is shifting from casual to meaningful, and that awareness creates responsibility. Now it's not just fun. Now it's not just vibes. Now it's potential. And potential carries weight. You may think he's clueless. You may believe he doesn't. See how much space he's taken in your mind. But trust me, men are very aware when a woman's emotional temperature rises. It's in the way you look at him. It's in how quickly you respond. It's in how you defend him when others question him. It's in the softness of your voice. It's in the pauses between your words. Energy always speaks before words do. And here's something powerful you need to understand. When your attention shifts toward him consistently, your standards shift too. You start evaluating him more seriously. You imagine him in your future. You measure his actions more carefully, and he can feel that evaluation. A man can sense when he's being considered for something long-term. It changes the air. The dynamic becomes heavier, deeper, more intentional. That's why sometimes when a woman starts caring deeply, a man either steps forward or pulls back, not because he doesn't feel it, but because he feels it. Your attention forces him to confront his own position. If he was just enjoying the moment before, now he has to decide if he deserves the moment, if he can handle the expectation that comes with being valued. And let me tell you something else. If you ever pull that attention back, he feels that too. When a woman withdraws emotional focus, when she becomes neutral again, when the warmth cools, a man notices immediately because he already registered the shift upward. So when it drops, it's obvious. That's how you know attention is powerful. So if he's constantly on your mind, don't think your feelings are floating in isolation. Your energy is interacting with his reality. The more you think about him, the more your behavior reflects investment. And the more your behavior reflects investment, the more he feels the shift. The real question is not whether he feels it. The real question is what kind of man he is when he feels it. A mature man recognizes increased attention as a gift and treats it carefully. An immature man sees it as validation and gets comfortable. But either way, understand this clearly. When a woman starts thinking about a man all the time, her energy changes. And when her energy changes, he feels it. Second, truth is this: he's thinking about you more than you realize. Let's go deeper. You think you're the only one lying awake at night replaying conversations. You think you're the only one smiling at random memories. You think you're the only one checking your phone hoping his name pops up. Let me tell you something straight. Energy is reciprocal. When someone occupies your mind constantly, there is usually an invisible thread pulling from both ends. Emotions don't just grow in a vacuum. Connection doesn't form on one side without leaving fingerprints on the other. Now, does that mean he's obsessing the same way you are? Not necessarily. Men and women process emotions differently. A woman sits in her feelings. She analyzes them, she names them, she explores them. A man, he compartmentalizes. He can be at work focused, laughing with friends, and still have you cross his mind in flashes. But those flashes matter. See, when you feel deeply connected to someone, it's rarely random. There has been an exchange. Conversations, eye contact, vulnerability, laughter, tension, something that created impact. And impact always leaves an imprint. You don't think about someone constantly unless something in the dynamic touched you. Maybe it was the way he listened. Maybe it was how he made you feel safe. Maybe it was how he challenged you. Whatever it was, it hit you somewhere real. And if it hit you, it likely hit him too. Men may not sit around talking about their feelings the way women do. That doesn't mean they don't feel. It just means they process internally, quietly. He might be driving and suddenly remember something you said. He might hear a song that reminds him of you. He might pass a place you both visited and pause for a second longer than usual. That pause, that's you crossing his mind. Here's what women often misunderstand. Just because he's not texting you every hour doesn't mean you're not present in his thoughts. Men don't always equate thinking with reaching out. Sometimes they think and say nothing, but thinking is still thinking. If you are that tuned in, if he's living rent-free in your head, chances are you have created a space in his too. Emotional chemistry is rarely one-sided when it feels that intense. You don't randomly feel someone that strongly without leaving some kind of mark. Connection requires participation. There was a look, a moment, a shift in tone, a vulnerability exchange. Something passed between you two that made it real. And real doesn't disappear quietly. Now let's be honest. Sometimes what you're feeling is amplified by hope. Sometimes you're filling in gaps with imagination. But when the connection was genuine, when there was consistency, depth, shared energy, that imprint runs both ways. He may not label it as "I miss her." He might label it as "she's different. I wonder what she's doing." That conversation "Yet with me, she understands me." Men often experience emotional awareness in subtle waves. They don't always dive deep into the feeling, but they notice it. And here's something powerful. When a woman's presence lingers in a man's mind, it disrupts his usual rhythm. He may try to ignore it, distract himself, stay busy. But if your energy truly touched him, he can't completely shake it, because connection isn't logical. It's energetic. And when two energies align, even briefly, they create memory patterns in the brain. Emotional moments stick. Vulnerable conversations stick. The way you looked at him when he was talking about something important that sticks. You think you're the only one replaying moments? He's replaying some too. Maybe not as often, maybe not as intensely, but more than you realize. And here's the key difference. Women tend to interpret thinking as longing. Men sometimes interpret thinking as curiosity, but curiosity grows. A man who keeps thinking about a woman starts wondering why. And when he starts wondering why, he starts paying closer attention to what he feels when she's around and what he feels when she's not. That's when things shift. So if he's constantly on your mind, don't assume you're alone in that emotional space. Don't automatically downgrade your impact. You don't feel someone that deeply without having been felt in return. The real issue isn't whether he's thinking about you. It's whether he's brave enough to act on those thoughts. Because thinking is silent, but action reveals everything. Third truth is this: he's testing his feelings silently. Now let's talk about something most women never see coming. Gee, while you're replaying conversations in your head, while you're analyzing his tone, his pauses, his word choices, he's analyzing something completely different. He's analyzing his freedom. That's how men operate. See, when a man starts feeling something real for a woman, his first instinct isn't always romance, it's assessment. Not because he doesn't care, but because commitment, attachment, and emotional depth require him to give up a certain level of independence. And independence is serious to a man. So while you're asking, does he like me? He's asking, what does this mean for my life? When a woman's energy becomes consistent, steady texts, emotional warmth, presence, support, a man feels the stability. And stability feels good. It feels calming. It feels grounding. But it also feels serious. And seriousness makes a man pause. That's when he starts testing himself silently. Do I miss her when she's not here? Not just physically, emotionally. When he's alone, when he's done with work, when he's off his phone, does his mind drift toward you naturally? Or only when you reach out? Why do I feel calm when she's around? This one is deeper than you think. Peace is powerful to a man. If your presence lowers his stress, if your voice slows his breathing, if your energy doesn't feel chaotic, that registers. He may not say it out loud, but he notices the difference between being around you and being around everyone else. And that difference matters. Why does her absence feel different? Now we're getting real. If he's used to casual connections, people coming and going, conversations starting and stopping, but your silence feels heavier, our distance feels noticeable, that forces him to confront something, because indifference doesn't create absence, only attachment does. See, a man doesn't usually panic at the first sign of feelings, he studies them. He observes himself. He experiments internally. He might go a day without texting just to see how he feels. He might distract himself with friends to check if you still cross his mind. He might intentionally create space to measure emotional impact, not to manipulate you, but to measure himself. Men test their feelings through distance. Women test feelings through communication. That's the difference. While you're thinking, why hasn't he said anything? He's thinking, how deep is this going? Because once a man admits to himself that he cares, it changes the stakes. It's no longer casual. It's no longer entertainment. It becomes responsibility. And responsibility requires readiness. So he checks himself. He pays attention to his reactions. If you pull back slightly, does he feel it? If you don't text, does he look at his phone? If you're quiet, does he feel restless? He may not confess these moments, but internally he's collecting data. That's how men make emotional decisions. Not through dramatic confessions, but through quiet observation of their own behavior. And here's the part that might surprise you. If he's asking himself those questions at all, you've already affected him. A man doesn't analyze feelings that don't matter. He doesn't test emotions that are meaningless. The very fact that he's checking his reactions means something has shifted inside him. But here's where women get impatient, because his silence can feel like indifference. When he doesn't immediately express what he's processing, you assume there's nothing there. But processing doesn't mean absence, it means evaluation. He's trying to understand whether what he feels is temporary or transformative. Temporary is easy. Transformative requires change. And change is big for a man. If he realizes he feels calmer with you, if he realizes your absence hits harder than he expected, if he realizes he misses your voice more than he thought he would, now he has to decide whether he's ready to lean into that. So while you're wondering where you stand, understand this. If he's testing his feelings, you already stand somewhere meaningful, because men don't test what they don't value. The real question is not whether he's feeling something. The real question is what conclusion he'll reach after he finishes testing himself. And trust me, when a man finishes that internal test, his next move will tell you everything. Fourth truth is this: he's feeling the pressure to step up. Now let's talk about something that changes the entire dynamic. When a man realizes a woman cares deeply, pressure enters the room. Not loud pressure, not dramatic pressure, but silent, steady pressure. And most women don't understand this part. You think if you don't say anything, if you don't demand anything, if you just go with the flow, there's no pressure on him. Oh, there is, because pressure doesn't come from your words. It comes from your value. When a man knows a good woman is emotionally invested, he feels the weight of expectation, even if you never speak it out loud. He knows that your attention is not casual. He knows your heart is not playing games. And that kind of care demands a decision. See, attention from just anyone is easy to handle, but attention from a woman who is nurturing, loyal, supportive, emotionally intelligent, that's different. That's not entertainment. That's opportunity. And opportunity forces responsibility. Once he feels that you genuinely care, he understands something clearly. This can either grow or it can break her. And no decent man wants to be the one who mishandles something real. So internally, pressure builds, not because you're asking for commitment every day, but because your consistency signals seriousness. When you think about him constantly, your behavior reflects emotional depth. You listen more, you invest more, you show up more. And that consistency sends a message. This is not a game. Now he has to ask himself, am I ready to match this? Can I lead this? Do I want to rise to this level? Because once emotions grow, there is no comfortable middle. Let me say that again. There is no comfortable middle once emotions grow. In the beginning, it's easy, it's fun, it's light. No expectations, no pressure, just chemistry. But when feelings deepen, neutrality disappears. He can't just float anymore. Either he steps up or he steps back. There is no sustainable in between. And that's where many men feel the heat. Stepping up means consistency. It means intentionality. It means showing effort publicly and privately. It means aligning words with actions. It means considering you in decisions. That's leadership, and leadership requires maturity. But stepping back, that means losing access to you, losing your warmth, your support, your admiration, your presence. And that loss is heavy, so the pressure builds. If you're constantly thinking about him, that emotional intensity isn't isolated. Your energy is becoming more focused, more intentional, more serious, and he feels that shift. Even if you never say, "What are we?" he feels the unspoken question. And here's the key: pressure reveals character. A mature man feels that pressure and rises. He thinks, if she's giving me this level of energy, I need to be worthy of it. He steps into clarity. He defines the connection. He protects it. An immature man feels the same pressure, but instead of rising, he retreats. He becomes inconsistent. He avoids defining things. He keeps it vague because vagueness delays responsibility. But understand this clearly. The pressure itself means you matter. Men don't feel pressure over women they see as temporary. They don't wrestle internally over situations they plan to discard. Pressure only appears when there's something valuable at stake. And a good woman is valuable. Your attention is valuable. Your emotional investment is valuable. So when he senses that your heart is leaning in, he knows the clock is ticking on indecision. At some point, he has to declare himself through action. Either he builds or he exits, because once a woman's feelings grow, she cannot remain comfortable in uncertainty forever. And deep down, he knows that. That's why you might notice subtle changes. He becomes more thoughtful, or more distant, more intentional, or more confused. That's pressure working. So if he's constantly on your mind, don't assume you're the only one carrying emotional weight. He's carrying something too, the weight of knowing that a good woman is watching his next move. And eventually, every man reveals who he is under pressure. Fifth truth is this: he's afraid of losing control. Now let's talk about something that most men will never admit out loud. He's afraid of losing control. See, men value control, especially emotional control. From a young age, most men are taught to be steady, logical, composed. Don't cry. Don't overreact. Don't get carried away. Stay strong. Stay solid. So when feelings start creeping in, real feelings, it shakes that foundation. When he senses that he matters deeply to you, something shifts inside him. Because now it's not just about you caring. It forces him to confront how much you might matter to him. And that's where things get unsettling. You see, as long as he believes he's the one in control, the one choosing, the one deciding, the one leading, he feels safe. But when he realizes your presence affects his mood, when your silence bothers him, when your smile lifts him, now he's not fully in control anymore. Now you have influence. And influence feels dangerous to a man who isn't used to vulnerability. Because love, real love, exposes you. It makes you care about outcomes. It makes you fear loss. It makes you consider someone else's feelings alongside your own. And that level of openness can feel like standing without armor. When he starts recognizing that your opinion matters to him, that your approval feels good, that your disappointment would hurt, he understands something powerful. He's no longer untouched, and being untouched is safe. Being unaffected is safe, but being emotionally involved, that's risk. Now let's be clear. His fear of losing control doesn't mean he doesn't care. In fact, it often means he cares more than he expected to. Because you don't fear losing control over something meaningless. You only fear it when the stakes are high, when he starts catching himself thinking about you during important moments. When he checks his phone hoping it's you, when he adjusts his schedule to see you, when your mood impacts his mood, that's when he realizes this is deeper than I planned. And men don't always plan to fall. Sometimes they walk into connection casually, just conversation, just chemistry, just attraction, but then it grows, and growth requires surrender. To truly love someone, a man has to surrender the illusion that he can't be hurt. He has to accept that if you walk away, it would affect him. He has to admit that your presence brings him peace and your absence would create disturbance. That's vulnerability. And vulnerability is not easy for most men, because vulnerability means you can't pretend you don't care. It means you can't act indifferent if she pulls back. It means you can't play games without consequences. And for a man who has built his identity around being composed and in control, that emotional exposure feels uncomfortable. So what does he do? Sometimes he tries to regain control. He may slow down communication. He may act less expressive. He may create emotional distance just to feel balanced again. Not because he doesn't feel something, but because he feels too much. He's trying to stabilize himself. He's thinking, let me not get ahead of myself. Let me not fall too fast. Let me make sure I'm still in control here. But here's the truth. The moment a man is afraid of losing control, he's already emotionally involved. Indifference doesn't create fear. Connection does. If he truly didn't care, he wouldn't feel unsettled by the depth. He wouldn't hesitate. He wouldn't analyze. He wouldn't pull back to think. The fear itself is evidence. And here's something powerful you need to understand. A mature man eventually accepts vulnerability as strength. He realizes that loving deeply doesn't make him weak. It makes him real. He learns that control isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about choosing to handle them responsibly. But an immature man, he runs from that vulnerability. He hides behind pride. He pretends he doesn't care. He convinces himself that staying detached is safer. Either way, the fear reveals something important. If he's afraid of losing control, it means you've touched something real inside him, because love, real love, doesn't leave a man unchanged. It humbles him, it softens him, and it forces him to decide whether he's strong enough to be open or comfortable enough to stay guarded. And that decision, that's where everything shifts. Sixth truth is this: he's watching you closely. Let me tell you something you may not realize. When a man feels a shift, he observes. He may not ask 100 questions. He may not confront you directly. He may not even change his tone. But he starts watching, because when something feels important to a man, he becomes strategic. Now understand this. Men are hunters by nature. And I'm not talking about games. I'm talking about instinct. When something matters, when something feels valuable, they study it. They gather information. They assess patterns. So if he senses your energy shifting, if he feels that your attention is deeper, more focused, he doesn't ignore it. He watches it. He notices who you talk to, not in an insecure, dramatic way, but he registers it. If you laugh a little harder with someone else, he sees it. If another man's name pops up often, he notes it. If your attention seems divided, he feels it. Why? Because once he starts caring, competition becomes real. He may not add it, but he wants to know where he stands. How fast you reply. If you used to answer quickly and suddenly you take longer, he feels that shift. If you become less available, less eager, less expressive, that doesn't go unnoticed. Men track consistency. When something changes, they ask themselves why. He notices whether you pull back, if your tone becomes neutral instead of warm, if your text becomes shorter, if your energy feels guarded. He studies it, not always consciously, but instinctively, because when he senses emotional movement, he wants to understand the direction. Are you leaning in or are you stepping away? And here's something powerful. He notices whether you glow differently. If you start focusing on yourself, dressing sharper, smiling more, being less reactive, he sees that. If you become calmer, more centered, less anxious about him, that stands out. Confidence is loud without saying a word. And when a woman shifts from chasing energy to grounded energy, a man feels that immediately. Now here's why this matters. If you're constantly thinking about him, your energy is changing. You may not even realize it. When we care deeply, our behavior adjusts. Our tone softens, our patience grows, our eyes linger longer, and he studies that change, even if he pretends he's not, because pretending is different from not noticing. Men don't always express what they observe, but they store it. They analyze patterns over time. They compare how you treat them versus how you treat others. They measure your consistency. When something feels important, they pay attention to detail. If he didn't care, he wouldn't watch. If you were irrelevant, he wouldn't analyze. Observation is investment. Let me say that again. Observation is investment. When a man is watching closely, it means he's deciding something. He's evaluating whether this connection is stable, whether you're consistent, whether you're aligned with him. And here's the part women often misunderstand. When he watches you, he's not just looking for flaws, he's looking for reassurance. He wants to see if your energy matches your words. He wants to see if you're steady or emotional chaos. He wants to know if he can trust what he's building. Because once a man feels something real, he doesn't want to lose. And men protect what they don't want to lose. So he studies your patterns. If you're grounded, that attracts him more. If you're unpredictable in a dramatic way, that triggers caution. If you're confident and calm, that increases respect. Your behavior becomes data, not because he's calculating coldly, but because he's considering seriously. And here's something even deeper. If he senses you pulling away slightly, becoming less available, less emotionally intense, his observation sharpens. Because distance clarifies value. When you're always there, comfort grows. When you shift, awareness grows. So if he's on your mind constantly, understand this. You're not invisible in his world. He is watching. He is noticing. He is studying the energy between you. The real question is not whether he sees the change. The real question is what decision he's building from what he sees. Because when a man watches closely, it means he's deciding whether you're temporary or irreplaceable. 7, and last truth is this: he's being forced to decide. Now, here's the part that changes everything. If someone is on your mind all the time, it usually means your heart is leaning toward attachment, and attachment demands direction. Feelings can float for a little while. Attraction can stay casual for a season. But attachment requires clarity. It requires movement. It requires a path. And deep down, he knows it. When a man realizes that a woman's energy is consistent, intentional, emotionally invested, he understands something without you ever saying it. This is heading somewhere. And once something is heading somewhere, a decision becomes unavoidable. At some point, he has to ask himself, am I building something here, or am I just enjoying the attention? That question may not come out of his mouth, but it forms in his mind, because enjoying attention is easy. It feels good. It boosts his ego. It gives him comfort without responsibility. But building something that requires effort, leadership, accountability, consistency. And here's what will shock you. That decision is already forming inside him long before he says anything. Every conversation, every moment of distance, every time you show support, every time you pull back slightly, he's gathering information. He's asking himself whether he sees you in his future or just in his present. Now, let me say this clearly, because this is where women get confused. Just because he feels pressure doesn't mean he will commit. Just because he thinks about you doesn't mean he's ready. Just because he senses your love doesn't mean he knows how to handle it. Feelings and readiness are not the same thing. A man can feel deeply and still hesitate. He can recognize your value and still be afraid of responsibility. He can see your worth and still lack the maturity to rise to it. That's why the decision matters. Because eventually emotional momentum forces clarity. If you're constantly on his mind, if your presence lingers, if your absence shifts his mood, he cannot stay neutral forever. Neutrality dies when emotions grow. He either steps forward with intention, or he slowly steps back to protect himself from something he's not prepared to carry. And here's where your power comes in. If he's being forced to decide, your job is not to force him faster. Your job is to observe. Don't panic. Don't explain your value. Don't lower your standards to make the decision easier for him. Stay grounded. Stay centered. Keep your dignity. Because when a man is deciding, pressure reveals his level. A grown man steps up when he recognizes value. He doesn't gamble with it. He doesn't stall endlessly. He doesn't risk losing a good woman over pride. When he sees something rare, he moves with intention. A boy hesitates. He enjoys the comfort but avoids clarity. He wants the benefits without the responsibility. He keeps things undefined so he doesn't have to rise. A confused man wastes time. He goes back and forth. He sends mixed signals. He feels something but doesn't understand himself enough to act decisively. And time, listen to me carefully, time is something a high-value woman does not waste. Your emotions are precious. Your attention is expensive. Your loyalty is not casual. So if he's on your mind nonstop, don't assume you alone in that emotional current. Something is happening on his side, T. Ooh, there's movement inside him. There is thought. There is pressure. There is evaluation. The real question is not whether he feels it. The real question is, when he feels it, will he rise to it? Because eventually every man shows you his answer. Not through words, not through promises, but through action. And action never lies. So let him decide. And while he's deciding, you continue becoming the woman who doesn't chase clarity. She attracts it. You don't beg for direction. You require it. And when he finally reveals himself through action, you won't be confused. You'll simply know whether he's building or whether it's time for you to walk away with your standards still intact. In the end, if a man is on your mind constantly, it's not random and it's not one-sided the way you think. Energy doesn't move in only one direction. While you're feeling the depth of it, something is shifting inside him too. He feels the change. He thinks about you more than he admits. He tests his emotions. He feels pressure. He fears losing control. He watches you closely. And ultimately, he is being forced to decide. But remember this, his internal struggle does not guarantee external action. Feelings mean nothing without movement. So don't lose yourself in wondering what he's thinking. Stay grounded. Keep your standards high. Let him reveal who he is through consistency, effort, and clarity. Because when a man truly recognizes value, he doesn't hesitate forever. And a high-value woman never waits endlessly for someone to choose what should already be obvious.